Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to talk about today is Three Comrades, and goes back to 1938, and it stars Robert Taylor, Margaret Sullivan, Frank Ottone, Robert Young. Directed by Frank Borzage, from a screenplay by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think the only time that Fitzgerald, the author of The Great Gatsby, got a screen credit. And it's an adaptation of a novel by Eric Marie Remarque, whose several of his other novels have been adopted into movies. Most famously, I suppose it would be All's Quiet on the Western Front, from about 8 years before. So this is set in Germany, and it's right after World War I. The film opens with the end of the war. Three soldiers that have survived the war will want to continue their friendship in civilian life. They pledge allegiance to each other. This is a story, very much a story about friendship and some of the positives that can come from this kind of deep friendship. But Germany is in very bad economic times. They open a garage repair shop. And they also do a little taxi driving, but they're just barely making ends meet. And talk about meeting, Robert Taylor, who's the youngest of this trio, meets Margaret Sullivan. And there's an instant attraction there. Margaret Sullivan is playing a character who is an aristocrat, but her family lost everything during the war, so she's living in her family mansion, but only in 2 rooms that is all she's got left, and she has no family left as well. And it's sort of intimated that she's being kept by a rich German industrialist. And so Robert Taylor and Margaret Sullivan meet an instant attraction, as is the case in a lot of Borzage movies. She does suffer from an illness. He doesn't know that at first. But this is an attraction that immediately leads into a kind of transcendent form of romantic love. And this is Borzage's forte. This is what he believed in. He believed in romantic love. Now, in movies of the 1930s, you would often have romances, and they would be sort of expected. And this is what audiences wanted to see. But with Borzage, he really believed in all this. He believed in the transcendent power of romantic love. So in these economic times, these poor economic times, we also see chaos and sort of anarchy, where there's groups of people that are causing destruction. It's intimated that these are sort of right-wing nationalists that are opposed to what might possibly be communism. Everything's a bit vague here. Robert Young is the idealist of these trio of friends, and so he's involved in what seems to be a kind of secret society. They're printing pamphlets, but he's found out, and these ruffians attack the taxi, and so he quits because he's worried that his friends are going to suffer for his idealism that they don't quite share. Now, all this, like I say, is pretty vague, but and evidently it was vague in Remarque's novel as well, that this was that these are the black shirts, that this is the rise of the fascists, and you might even consider that this group that Robert Young is involved with could be the communists. But they're basically preaching pacifism, and which is what Remarque was in real life. He was a pacifist. But for Borzage, these are intrusions into what he considers the ultimate part of life, which is to love another person. That you learn you gain your identity through the love of another person, and Borzage, with great tenderness, with kind of poetic idealism, he exalts this, and he does this in all his movies because he really believes this. This is his mantra, and this is what makes his films, I think, so compelling. So we have these intrusions, economic, political. We have illness intruding upon what is the most important thing in life, and the love has to be strong enough to enable it to meet all these challenges that the world and life, as we live it, puts in the way of this transcendence. And so, as far as the performances go, the two lovers are Robert Taylor and Margaret Sullivan, and this is, you know, if you're a Borzage fan, if you're a fan of what he's trying to do in his films, this is the heart and soul of the movie. And Robert Taylor, you might think, gee, would be a great part for Jimmy Stewart. And in fact, in The Mortal Storm, 2 years later, they have a similar, although it's much more explicit, that these are the Nazis. And Robert Young is the character here. He's the idealist. In The Mortal Storm, he's the one that falls for the Führer in the fatherland. It's much more explicit. In The Mortal Storm, in 38, 37, when they made the film, MGM and the Hollywood studios had distribution throughout Europe, and they didn't want to lose the German-speaking market, and they were warned about that. You know, that you can't say that these ruffians are black shirts, and that being negatively portrayed in a Hollywood film. So, but by the time 1938 comes along, when the film is released, I think Hitler was just about or had taken over Austria. So he was in the papers all the time. And I've read that audience thought that this should have been more explicit. They were sort of pussyfooting around what was in the headlines every day. But in the context of the movie, the story is really 1920, where there was really no, I don't know what Hitler was doing in 1920, but it was later on, I think, in that decade that Hitler really came to prominence. And, so Borzage is in real life, he was part of the anti-fascists, and he wanted to alert people to the dangers of what was going on in Germany, and certainly in The Mortal Storm 2 years later, he's much more explicitly doing that. So the performances here, you know, like I say, Robert Taylor, I mean, he's a good-looking guy. There's no doubt of it. You can see that Margaret Sullivan would be attracted to him, but it's in some ways it's really her film because, and she does get an Academy Award nomination. I think she won Best Picture and Best Actress in some other film groups. And it's one of her great performances. If you love Margaret Sullivan, you have to see this movie. I mean, she is just so luminous. She loved Borzage movies. I think this is her first one with him, and she always wanted to make a film with him. She adored him. She adored his approach to filming and the poetic nature of his films. And in 1938, Borzage had quite a reputation. He's sort of forgotten today, but in 1938, he was, you know, in silent films, he made, you know, masterpieces. I think he won the first 2 Best Director Oscars. So he had significant power. And the backstory here is that when Fitzgerald was on the staff and he was given this assignment. Now, this is produced by Joseph Mankiewicz, and who also was a screenwriter. And Fitzgerald turned in a script that had potentially great literary value, but it didn't really gel much as a script. Margaret Sullivan had trouble saying Fitzgerald's lines. In the end, I think they only used about a third of Fitzgerald's script, as Mankiewicz and several other screenwriters, some incognito. One actually has a credit below Fitzgerald's in the screenplay credit. So, but in the end, Borzage had had the final call. As I said, he was a very famous director in 1938, and he had power. People in the studio really respected him. So he changed things around as well when they filmed it. And the filming was all either in the studio or in the backlot. They built this whole city. It's not stated what the city is. It doesn't look big enough for Berlin. But we definitely know we're in a German city. And so the film, when it was released, it didn't get very good reviews outside of Margaret Sullivan. And it's kind of hard. In some ways, it's easy to understand because it's such an old-fashioned movie. It was probably old-fashioned for 1938. And Borzage, coming out of silent film, he was all about the image. And his depiction of love, might have not been too impressive to the cynics of his age, and certainly to our age, we would look at this conception of life as a bit not just old-fashioned, but a bit naive. So it doesn't. It should rank much higher, I think. I think the Mortal Storm is, I think, the second most watched video on my channel, which always amazes me. I do have a playlist on Borzage movies. I'll add this to them. I did one a few months ago on Man's Castle. Hopefully there'll be some more, because, and especially from his silent days, we'll get some more Blu-rays on from Borzage's output. He made a lot of films and then he just stopped. And after the war, after Moonrise, which is on the Criterion channel, our Criterion collection, he stopped because movies, the country was too dark, too cynical, and it just didn't suit Borzage's outlook on life. But as time goes by, I think he's going to be recognized more and more as one of the great directors of the 20s and 30s, and certainly Three Comrades is an illustration of that. This is a Warner Archives released, I think came out a few months ago. You can see this on YouTube. It is streaming on YouTube. It has nothing on it. It's just the movie. Nothing. Well, there's a short and also animated short. In fact, the one short is directed by Jacques Tourneur, and who would go on to make Out of the Past and some of the Val Lewton movies. But that's it. There's nothing pertaining to the film, which I think is a real shame. Okay, another film I highly recommend from Frank Borzage. I hope I'm making more Borzage fans through the videos that I've had discussing him. So thanks a lot for everybody who listened. I really appreciate it. Take care.